All right, right now we are taking you to a city that you think you know, but you really don't. Des Moines, Iowa. Now, it might be the Midwest's most underrated weekend getaway. We're talking about big city flavor, small town prices, and a food scene that just might surprise you. That's our virtual trip today on Destination Heartland. I'm Sharon Chen with KCTV5 News. So let's dig right in. Joining me right now is Ben Hanfeld, and he's with the Visitors and Conventions Bureau for Des Moines, Iowa, which is also known as Catch Des Moines, right, Ben?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
All right, well, welcome in. All right, so let's begin with this. How would you describe Des Moines to someone who's never been there before?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's always misconceptions and stereotypes about Iowa, that we're all cornfields and cows and caucuses, the three C's really. But, Des Moines is the capital city. We're a big, bustling city. A lot of people don't know Greater Des Moines, which compromises about 15 different communities, is the largest growing metro area in the entire Midwest. So, that includes Chicago and Kansas City and Minneapolis. So, it's a great place, for people to live. But in the past probably 20 years, it's really evolved into a great place for people to visit too. I think we like to say it kind of has that big city energy, but the Midwest ease. We have all the cool restaurants and we have the attractions and the breweries and like everything that you would kind of and expect from a large urban area. But it's easy to navigate. You can get anywhere in 20 minutes here. So, and it's easy to find parking and it's safe and it's walkable. So I think a lot of people that come here, I mean, I think I know from a lot of people that we bring in are just constantly surprised that Des Moines is what it is. And that being that, it's kind of this really cool, vibrant city right in the middle of the heartland that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many areas here in the heartland that so many people think as flyover country, but it really is not. I mean, you really need to kind of get in there and explore the city, which is why I'm so excited about our episode today. Let's talk a little bit about the history of Des Moines. What are some of those key moments that people may or may not know about?
Yeah, I mean, Des Moines, I think, has always had the reputation of kind of being a sleepy insurance town.
Hmm.
I grew up about 2 hours north of Des Moines, and we would come down here to go to Adventureland, which is the big amusement park that everybody brings their kids to every summer, which is still there and a great place to visit. But, I moved to Chicago and lived there after college for about 15 years. And then when we decided the pull of moving home was a little too strong. We came back and visited Des Moines and stayed in the East Village, which is kind of like the cool hip neighborhood. And we are like, wow, Des Moines has really, really grown, and it really has since probably the early 2000s. Kind of you would go downtown and things would be closing up at 5 o'clock because all the insurance places were closed and there wasn't a whole lot of nightlife. But really, since kind of probably those early 2000s. We got Wells Fargo Arena, which is now Casey's Center.
Hmm.
So that arena really helped kind of transform downtown as that became part of the convention center. We have an attached convention hotel too that came a few years ago, about 7, 8 years ago. So that was a huge thing as far as us bringing in conventions and huge events. And then there's neighborhoods like the East Village where they were kind of run down before. And now those are kind of the must-see, cool, hip areas with all your boutiques and all your restaurants. And we have Papa John Sculpture Park, which kind of
Oh, wow.
became, it's this, huge, crown jewel right in the middle of downtown that kind of really ties everything together and gives it kind of that sense of place. Because that's kind of what we struggle with, I think, in Des Moines is like, what is our thing? We don't have mountains, we don't have like ocean. We're not Austin with the music scene and stuff, but we
Hmm.
do have like a little bit of everything. And I think we also have, the people here. You hear Iowa nice, and I think that's a real thing too. I mean, that's like when you come here, you just feel comfortable, and you feel welcomed. I think you go into a lot of big cities and you feel kind of, like you're an annoyance to the locals. Whereas here, the locals are going to say hi to you when you walk by. They're going to make eye contact with you. They're going to give you directions. So, I think all of kind of the amenities that we've seen pop up in the past 20 years, combined with kind of that, attitude that we all have of, we're happy to be here and we're happy to host you and we're happy to share recommendations of our favorite restaurants and favorite places to go has really kind of evolved Des Moines into what it is today.
And I love that because, I mean, that's kind of the best things about one of the best things about being here in the Midwest is that Midwest nice. And it's,
Yeah.
Des Moines is one of those places for sure. Let's talk a little bit about, you said there were all these different neighborhoods that make up Des Moines. So, what's the best way to get around when people are there? Is it kind of a walkable area? Just kind of set that up for us.
Yeah, I mean, downtown Des Moines is very much walkable. So it's split by the Des Moines River. So you have the beautiful Des Moines River. So the east and west side of downtown is then attached by a big bridge called the Women of Achievement Bridge, which is a beautiful photo op at night. Gets like nice and lit up. You can walk or bike across and get to the east side of downtown, which is the East Village that I referred to, or you could go to the west side of downtown, which has Court Avenue, and that's where the event center is, and a bunch of other cool restaurants and stuff. So, downtown is, very much walkable. So you can, there's those two distinct parts. But then, like any other city, whether it's a Chicago or a Kansas City, I think part of the fun is exploring and finding those other neighborhoods. So,
Absolutely.
whether it's something like Historic Valley Junction, which is in West Des Moines, which used to be kind of an old railway, and now it's just a collection on Fifth Street of like all these cool like vintage stores and antique shops and like cool little eateries. So like that's a little cool area. Of course, also in West Des Moines, you have like the big shopping district. So if you don't want the boutiques and you want the big name brands, there's the Jordan Creek Town Center, which is one of the largest malls in the Midwest. That's where you've got stuff like your Top Golf and your Dave and Buster's and
Hmm.
your Apple Store and like all the big name brands, your Costco, of course. So, there's a good juxtaposition of, I think, historic neighborhoods and then kind of cool modern neighborhoods. And then, all kind of anchored by the two, things downtown, which would be downtown and then the East Village. So, and if you do have to drive to those places, like the average drive time anywhere within Greater Des Moines is 21 minutes. So
Hmm.
that's if you're going from downtown all the way to one of the farthest out suburbs. So, this isn't like a Chicago or something where it might take you an hour and a half just to get out to the suburbs. You can get to anywhere pretty quick. I think we have more parking spots than about any place in America, so you will never be driving around looking for anywhere to park. So it's really easy to navigate to the different walkable neighborhoods and then spend a lot of time, in each of them because it didn't take you long to get there.
That's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about this for the history buffs out there. What are some of the history anchored neighborhoods? And let's talk a little bit about the stories that come with those neighborhoods that people might like to explore.
Yeah, no, I mean Des Moines is full of history and just a bunch of like historic buildings and all kinds of stuff. One of my favorite places is called it's called Living History Farms, and that
Mm.
is in Urbandale, and it's a 500-acre open air museum, and it kind of tells the 300 plus year history of how Iowans kind of transformed prairie into one of the most agricultural regions in the world. So the cool thing to break it down with that, so you have like historical interpreters there. So you might go to like the 1709 farm and you'll have
Oh, wow.
old timey baseball. You'll have people milking cows. You'll have people like welding and blacksmith, like an old blacksmith house. And of course they stay in character and everything too. So, those are, really cool. And then we have a place like the Jordan House, which the Jordan House was like an 1850 big Victorian mansion that served as a key place on the Underground Railroad station here in Iowa. So, you've got a bunch of cool things like that. And then, historic East Village, Historic Valley Junction, which has the ties to the railway. There's just a bunch of cool stuff, and all of that stuff, which can be explained better than I probably can, would be found at the State Historical Society, which is right here downtown. So you can go there. It's one of our best museums. That thing will show you. It's got the whole history of Iowa and the whole history of all these neighborhoods, and it's free too. So,
Wow.
something like that really can help tell the story too.
Yeah, and just an opportunity to kind of learn and relive that experience. As far as experiences, let's talk about the big attractions in town, which I know that there are many here to get into.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's all the neighborhoods I've talked about. There's
Hmm.
Adventureland, which is, the big amusement park. We have the Lordson Skate Park, which, here's a little fun fact, is
Uh-huh.
the largest skate park in the entire United States. That was just built right along the river just a few years ago. And it's hosted events like the Dew Tour and a bunch of the huge skating competitions. So even if you don't skate, it's kind of fun to live vicariously and kind of watch the people that do that. And sports town, we're a great sports town because
Uh-huh.
Iowa, one of the blessings and the curses is we don't have any pro sports teams. But that just makes us even more passionate about any other sports that we have. So whether it's the college sports with the Hawkeyes or the Cyclones or the
Mm-hmm.
Drake Bulldogs, we love sports and we show up. So we were voted the number one minor league sports market in America a few years ago. So we have top affiliates from, the Iowa Cubs. So you can come catch an Iowa Cubs game and see, who's going to be playing in Wrigley Field by the summer. And the Iowa Wild, which are the top hockey affiliate of like the Minnesota Wild. The Iowa Barnstormers, which is where Kurt Warner, Hall of Famer Kurt Warner, he cut his teeth there for the Barnstormers.
Oh, wow.
So we have like a ton of great minor league sports teams that you can experience for, a fraction of the cost that you're going to pay with some of the big pro sports teams. And then, I mean, our art scene is amazing. We have a free art museum that is one of, the best in the country, in my opinion. And of course, we're known for our events. We've kind of become kind of a Midwest event city. We have a
Mm-hmm.
little thing, just a little mom and pop thing called the Iowa State Fair,
I
which
was
I'm
going to
sure you've
bring that
heard
up.
of,
Yep.
which brings 1 million, over 1 million
Wow.
people every August and breaks attendance records nearly every year. It's of course weather dependent because we're in the Midwest. But like that's the huge thing. And I mean that should be a bucket list thing that I feel like everybody has to experience at least once is the Iowa State Fair. It's just 11 days of some of the best people watching and food eating that you'll ever have, like right there in the middle of August. And also, I would be remiss not to add the downtown farmers market, which
Uh-huh.
is every Saturday from May through October, and it's not your mom and pop's little farmers market. It takes over the entire west side of downtown, the whole Court Avenue district. It's about 25,000 people each Saturday. So there's everything. Of course, you can get your fresh produce there, but there's tons of prepared food. There's live music. There's about 1 million dogs and baby strollers. It's just a great time and a great way to kind of start your weekend in Des Moines.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of that. And the Iowa State Fair, that is on my bucket list because what I really want to see is that butter cow. I hear so much about it. I want to get out there and kind of see it for myself in person. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah, the butter cow might be our most famous resident, I think. Yeah.
yes, I
Okay.
agree. You talked a little bit about the art scene. Do you guys also have like public murals that people can take in depicting, the life in Des Moines there, but also maybe some galleries, art festivals that people will definitely want to put on the to-do list?
Yeah, no, I would say, I mean, Des Moines is one of the more hidden gem art towns, I think, in the entire Midwest. And, we do have that Papa John Sculpture Park, which I mentioned, is right downtown. And it's like really great. And, again, we have that art center, which is free, and gets some of the coolest exhibits, in the entire country. And we also have, the Des Moines Art Festival, which happens in June every year and is one of the biggest art festivals in the entire country and has won a bunch of prestigious awards. And that thing lasts the whole weekend. So that thing is, there's kids' activities, there's music from like big bands. That takes over kind of the whole Western Gateway, which is where the sculpture park is. So it's pretty cool to have an art festival where you're not only surrounded by the art of those artists, but you're within the confines of the sculpture park and a bunch of cool architecture from all of like the downtown buildings. And then, of course, there's just art on almost every touch point that you walk through downtown. So you could walk from the Western Gateway, which is where Sculpture Park is, to the East Village. And you'll probably have about 10 different stops on the way, snapping selfies, with the different murals and stuff. So it's very photo friendly, very sensory friendly. It's just a very kind of artistic town, that you
Hmm.
wouldn't, necessarily expect.
Oh, I love it. So much to see and do, and we're just scratching the surface here, folks. We still have to talk about dining and shopping, which I know is a high point in Des Moines. But first, what we want to do is take a quick break, and then we'll be back with Ben for more. And welcome back to Destination Heartland. Today we are taking a virtual trip to Des Moines, Iowa. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Ben Hanfeld with the Visitors and Conventions Bureau. Ben, we have talked about so much to do in Des Moines. I mean, the list is endless. So now
It
let's
is.
dig in. Yeah, it truly is. Now let's dig into people who love the outdoor life, who maybe want to get a little closer to nature. So what can they find in Des Moines?
Yeah, no, I mean Des Moines, we are the biggest city, but we also have kind of all these awesome pockets of nature both within the city and then, again, I talked about how everything's about 20 minutes away. So you can get outside of the city and go to a lot of these other parks too. So I think the most iconic, probably the one that's most talked about would probably be the High Trestle Trail. It's one of the most iconic outdoor experiences in all of Iowa. Um, the bridge itself is probably the big headline. It's called the High Trestle Trail Bridge, and it's these giant steel beams that kind of form these diamonds, and they light up blue at night. So you can imagine it's an awesome, awesome photo experience. But it's also the highest trail bridge in the
Oh,
entire country. So, it's a long long look down as well. So that thing's cool, and it's just peppered. Like you really get a taste of Iowa, literally, if you were to rent a bike and ride the High Trestle Trail, because it's connected kind of by all these small cities. So you can like take a big bike ride, get the awesome photo ops, and then you can stop at all these places along the way and sit on a patio and have an adult beverage or a soda pop for the kids and get some appetizers and kind of just experience kind of that Midwest nice that we talked about. And it's really probably one of the highlights of any outdoor experience that you could have. And then within the city, we have a place like Waterworks Park, which is a huge urban park. There's a cool little like beer garden in it in the summer that's open. There's like an outdoor concert amphitheater there where there's a lot of like big name concerts
hmm.
that have really grown in the past year. The concerts have kind of become like a bigger priority there too. And it's actually like space wise, like Waterworks Park is actually bigger than Central Park in New York,
Oh,
which I
wow.
didn't know when I moved here. So there's, tons of trails and tons of things to do all within Waterworks Park, as well as Gray's Lake, which is a nice little oasis in the middle of the city too, where, you can rent a kayak or you can rent, a paddle board or anything like that. And it's got a cool like view of the skyline, and there's like a 2 mile trail around it if you want to just go on a quick run or a quick hike or anything, or have a picnic with the skyline in the background. Gray's Lake is great for that. And then kind of splitting the difference would be Jester Park, which is kind of just outside of Des Moines proper, like in the suburbs. And that has everything from a golf course to trails to you can do horseback riding there. They have buffalo and bison that you can look at and that kind of ties back to like the history of the land and the history of the area and stuff. So, again, with 800 miles of trails like within the region, there's kind of something for everyone to explore, whether you're a biker, whether you're a hiker, or whether you just want really cool pictures for your Instagram feed.
Yeah, and it sounds like, for the adventure seeker to maybe even somebody who just is looking for that tranquil, peaceful moment, you guys have it all there for sure.
Right?
Um,
Yeah.
let's talk about this part here, the dining and shopping, because I know we got a lot to get into here. As far as dining, what are some of those key restaurants that visitors want to make sure that they get there?
Yeah, I mean, we're right in the middle of Iowa, so we literally
Uh-huh.
put the farm in farm to table, right? Like
Yep.
all of, the food that you're being sourced, is, probably about 20 miles away. So, we're also the biggest pork producer in the entire country. So, we're really a true agricultural powerhouse. So, we have a lot of great stuff, but of course, getting back to the stereotypes in the Iowa State Fair, as great as it is, where you can get corn dogs and butter on a stick and
Yep.
everything that everybody makes fun of, but which is all great food. But we also have like a really great fine dining scene here. The James Beard nominations just came out recently, and we had four different places that were up for James Beard nominations. We have a buzzy new place called Oak Park, which is probably the best shot that I was ever had at getting a Michelin star restaurant. And that has, you have to book it months in advance. It's just a great, great place. But like much of Iowa, it's very accessible. It's not too frou-frou. You could take, anybody there, a picky eater or anything, and you're still gonna, have steak and chicken and things like that. But just the way it's prepared. And then there's a place called Harbinger too, which kind of put us on the map, like with fine dining. That was one of the first places to get a James Beard nomination for us. And that place really, highlights seasonality and, taking the crops that we have and, making as fresh and beautiful plates as possible. Sometimes I go there and the food almost looks too pretty to eat. So, we have that fine dining scene, but also we're Iowa. So we're not pretentious. I mean, one of our main staples is the breaded pork tenderloin, the sandwich that is, for $10, it'll feed you like three meals. And it's as big as a frisbee. So, that's kind of like our state sandwich and stuff. So you can feed a family of four for about one $10 tenderloin. So,
Oh,
we have kind of that something for everyone where you have kind of the unexpected, like, whoa, I would never expect that in Iowa. This is amazing. But then we also have the tenderloins and the corn dogs. And, so we are what you think we are, but we're also kind of what you wouldn't expect as well.
yeah, it sounds like it. And that tenderloin sandwich, that kind of sounds like the Des Moines specialty. Am I right on that?
Yeah, well, there's the tenderloin, and then there's steak de Burgo, which is
Oh,
kind of also the Des Moines thing, because the tenderloin's more like an Iowa thing, I suppose.
mm-hmm.
But the steak de Burgo is specifically Des Moines, which is it's basically a fillet. So you have a fillet, and then it's covered in like butter and garlic sauce.
Oh,
There's two versions. There's the butter sauce version, and then there's a cream sauce version. So there's constant debates on who likes what, but you really can't go wrong with either. I mean, it's a delightful cut of steak slathered in butter or cream sauce. I mean, come on.
I
There
mean,
is
we're
no wrong answer there. So,
right, exactly. You can't go wrong there for sure. And I'm also sensing the butter theme here in Des Moines.
yeah. Yes, yes, exactly. The butter. Yes, lots of butter.
Oh yeah. When it comes to kind of that restaurant scene, are there any local coffee shops, bakeries, treat shops that the locals love, but the tourists may not necessarily know about?
Oh yeah, for sure. Lots of hidden gems here. For
Uh-huh.
coffee, tons of great coffee places. Horizon Line Coffee, which is right downtown, is about the best cup of coffee that you will ever have. And it comes in these recyclable glass, like little mason jars. So you're doing good for the environment as well. But it's also cool because, they'll use, different ingredients and stuff. And I had one there, it had ube in it. Don't
Oh,
ask me what ube is, but it's purple, so like the drink was like
uh-huh.
a really cool. purple thing, and you could see it in the glass and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But that's got that kind of cool, sleek, kind of minimalist vibe where it's got some of, basically I like to call it's the coffee you can't make at home. You're gonna get something there where you're just like, wow, this is amazing. So yeah, but tons of great coffee places for breakfast. My personal favorite and kind of the local favorite is
Mm-hmm.
probably Waveland Cafe, which there's nothing like super trendy or fancy about it. It's, kind of a greasy spoon diner that's been there forever, but like just super comfortable, like tons of character with a bunch of like just kind of like fun stuff on the wall. And it's a real slice of life. Like you'll walk there, and you'll see like the young hipsters there kind of discussing their night out before. You'll see kind of, the old guy reading the newspaper there at the bar. Fun fact, it's a favorite of Jason Momoa, who
Oh.
who's one of our native sons. So every time he comes back to visit his mom, who still lives here, there's always, on social media or in the newspaper, Jason Momoa sightings at Waveland Cafe. So they even named one of the dishes there, and it's called the Momoa. It's the most expensive thing on the menu because it's the biggest. Because as you
Yes,
can imagine,
he's
a lot.
huge.
So it's like
Yeah.
literally like a double order of like biscuits and gravy with hash browns, and I mean it's pretty much a little bit of everything. So, but yeah, no, Waveland Cafe, um, is definitely my favorite and like a local favorite. They do have the best hash browns. If you like hash browns, they advertise best hash browns in the galaxy. And I don't really think that's hyperbole. I think it's pretty, I think it's pretty true. But we also have the trendy places too. So,
I do love me some hash browns for sure. All right, from dining to shopping, we already talked about one of the biggest malls in the Midwest. What else is there for shopping opportunities in Des Moines?
yeah, I mean, there's tons. I mean, there was the East Village. So that's where you would go. Like, that's kind of our hip neighborhood, the cool
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood. So that's where you go for like the cool boutiques, and the small kind of like, artisanal restaurants and stuff like that. There's Valley Junction, which is in West Des Moines, which is one of our biggest suburbs. And West Des Moines is kind of like the shopping suburb. So if you're coming to Des Moines to shop, you pretty much have to go to West Des Moines either for Jordan Creek or then you go for Valley Junction. And that's where you're going to get like the antiques and kind of the historic charm. Then you have Altoona, which is where Adventureland is. So if you came to take the kids to Altoona, uh, there's the outlets of Des Moines is there. So, you could shop there and, do your outlet shopping or, outlet mall shopping. But then, I mean, all of our like 15 different cities, like a lot of them have like these historic town squares and historic downtowns. So within all of those, whether, you're going to Ankeny, there's a place called Old Town Ankeny, where there's going to be a bunch of different cool shops too. So really, I mean, any place that you go, there's going to be some cool shops, but definitely, West Des Moines is kind of, I think, your hub for, both big and small, and then downtown, as well.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. We have time for one more question here, which let's talk about, which is we already talked about the Iowa State Fair, but I know there's other seasonal events and festivals there in Des Moines. What are some of the ones that people should take note of?
Yeah, of course, Iowa State Fair is the big one.
Uh
So,
huh.
mark your calendars in, towards the middle of August for 11 days. You got 11 days to get here for that one. But the farmers market every Saturday, I think those are the two big ones. But then, there's the Des Moines Art Festival, which we mentioned. So that's a great one in June where, you don't have that Midwest humidity. It hasn't quite kicked in yet. So it's usually really pleasant here around the art festival. So that's a great one. Actually, coming up here in a few weeks is the Drake Relays, which, those are one of the most iconic races in the entire country. So there's a big track, which we call the Blue Oval. So that tradition has dated back to like 1910. So it's high schoolers, it's college people, it's future Olympians, it's past Olympians. So the Drake Relays is like a big thing for a whole week. Like the whole town is kind of painted blue, literally. So that's a great thing, to come to. And then a recent one would be Hinterland Music Festival, which
Hmm.
kind of started out, it's about 30 miles south of Des Moines, kind of started out as kind of this small kind of like Americana music festival. And now it's kind of turned into really the regions and one of the nation's kind of like must-see music festivals where you'll have everybody from like Chapel Rowan to Noah Kahan, and like everybody comes there. So it's kind of one where instead of kind of begging people to come here, you have big artists that are like wanting to come to this music festival, and it's not just like an Iowa thing. Like people will travel all over from the Midwest to go to Hinterland, which is in that first week of August, and it sells out fast. So if you want tickets, I would check out those right now. But those are kind of like the big ones that I think give a good sampling as far as, whatever you're into, music, art, sports, festivals. We have all the stuff.
Yeah, it really does sound like it. My gosh, Des Moines definitely sounds like one place to go and explore and experience for sure. Ben, we just really want to thank you for joining us today for Destination Heartland. So much to see and do in Des Moines for sure.
Yes, yes, go to Catch Moines, check out our event calendar and start planning.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.